They called him a failure. Max wasn't like the others. While the rest of the canines obeyed every command, Max did the opposite. He was strong, smart, but wild. Trainers gave up. Too stubborn, they said. Too broken. So they dumped him at a small town shelter. No ceremony. No goodbye. Now he just sat in the last kennel. Head low, eyes tired. The sound of barking echoed around him, but he didn't react anymore. People came and went, choosing puppies with floppy ears and wagging tails. No one ever picked Max, until one afternoon, a pair of black boots stopped in front of his cage. "Who's this?" Officer Jake asked, looking through the bars. The shelter worker sighed. "That's Max. Failed canine. Nobody wants him." Jake crouched, staring into Max's eyes. They were sharp, alert, not broken, just waiting. "Mind if I take him out?" "Your call," the worker shrugged. "But he's been returned twice," bit one handler. "Nearly broke a leash last time." Max didn't move as the gate opened. Jake clipped the leash and gently said, "Come on, buddy." Max stood up, quiet, cautious. They walked out into the sunlight. No barking, no pulling, just a heavy silence. Jake stopped near his cruiser. "You've got good posture," he muttered. "Bet you were top of your class until something went wrong." Max looked up, ears twitching. Jake made his choice. "I'll take him." The shelter staff exchanged worried looks. "You sure?" Jake nodded. "I know what it's like to be labeled." At home, things weren't easy. Max didn't eat for 2 days. He wouldn't sleep unless the lights were on. He flinched at sudden sounds and growled if anyone came too close. Jake didn't push him. "Take your time, partner," he whispered every night, sitting by the dog bed with a cup of cold coffee in hand. One evening, Max wandered over and rested his head on Jake's boot. Jake didn't move, just smiled, eyes misty. "There you are, back at the station." The other officers didn't understand. "You brought that dog?" one said. "He's got a record longer than mine." Jake stayed calm. "Give him time." Still, whispers followed Max everywhere. They called him the reject. Even the janitor wouldn't mop near him. Max didn't react. He stayed close to Jake, watching, learning. One night, Jake brought out an old chew toy. "Used to belong to my last canine. Hero dog." Max sniffed it, then backed away. Jake sighed. "You don't have to be him, just be you." The breakthrough came on a foggy morning. Jake was responding to a burglary call. Routine stuff. He left Max in the back seat. But when he got inside the house, something felt wrong. "Police," Jake shouted. "Anyone here?" Silence. Then a creak behind him. Before Jake could turn, a man lunged at him from the shadows, knife raised. Max shattered the cruiser window. Glass flew. He tore through the door and tackled the attacker to the ground. Teeth bared, growling like thunder. Jake stood there, stunned. Max sat beside the subdued man, chest heaving, eyes locked on Jake like he was asking, "Did I do it right?" Jake dropped to his knees. "You saved me." Max licked his face. The station couldn't believe it. "That dog? Seriously? That dog is the reason I'm still breathing." Suddenly Max wasn't the failure anymore. He was the one who ran through glass. The department gave him a chance to retrain, this time with Jake leading the sessions. Commands that once got ignored now worked. Max followed Jake's voice, like it was gospel. Still, there were moments. Loud noises sometimes made him freeze. Other handlers couldn't get near him. But with Jake, he was loyal to the core. "You're not broken," Jake told him one night. "You were just waiting for someone to believe in you." One evening, a new officer asked Jake, "Why'd you pick him?" Jake smiled, watching Max chew a tennis ball in the corner. "Because I saw myself in him." The officer raised a brow. "You were a failed canine too." "No, but I've been left behind. Told I wasn't good enough." He looked down at Max. "I know what it's like to feel forgotten." Max lifted his head like he understood. From that day on, Max had a badge of his own. He wasn't perfect. He didn't need to be. He was loyal, brave, unshakably bonded to the one person who saw past the labels. Officer Jake and Canine Max. The duo no one believed in. Now they were the talk of the town. People whispered when they walked by, "That's the dog who saved him." But Max didn't care about the attention. He only cared about one thing, staying by Jake's side. Always. Max, he a police dog? Jake nodded. Yep, best partner I've ever had. She almost smiled. Almost. He looks serious. Jake chuckled. Only when he's working. The silence stretched. Then she stood. I gotta go. Jake didn't stop her. All right, but if you ever need help, he pulled a card from his pocket. That's me. She didn't take it, just walked off again. Max watched her until she disappeared. They saw her again the next week. Same hoodie, same street, but this time she was limping. Jake pulled over. Hey Rosa. She froze. How do you know my name? Jake held up his hands. You dropped this last time. He reached into the car and held up a student ID. Didn't mean to scare you. She didn't answer. Just backed away. Jake didn't press. But Max stepped forward. Rosa stiffened. Max didn't bark. He just sat down, tail gently tapping the sidewalk. Waiting. Rosa blinked. Then slowly, knelt down. Max pressed his nose into her hand. She didn't pull back. Is your leg okay? Jake asked softly. She shrugged. It's fine. You hungry? Another shrug. Jake opened the back seat. We've got peanut butter crackers. Max's favorite. Rosa hesitated, then climbed in. They sat parked for a while. Rosa on one side. Max in the middle. Jake watching the road. She nibbled on a cracker. I didn't run away. I just don't like going home. Jake didn't ask why. Max gently laid his head on her lap. Rosa flinched at first. Then she let him stay. Over the next week, she started showing up near the station. Sometimes at the diner, sometimes by the gas station, where Max liked to sniff old tires. Jake never questioned it, just nodded when he saw her. Max, though, he'd light up every time, tail wagging. Eyes bright, Rosa would grin and say, Hey Max. It became a routine. A quiet one. But then one night, Jake got a call. Suspicious activity near Old Route 6. Possible break-in. He and Max were already rolling. But as they turned onto the dusty road, Jake slammed the brakes. There by the side of the road, Rosa, crying, bleeding from her lip. Jake jumped out. Rosa, what happened? She shook her head, trembling. He followed me. I tried to get away. Jake's voice was tight. Who? Before she could answer, a truck engine roared in the distance. Headlights. Jake turned. Max, stay close. The truck stopped a few feet ahead. A man stepped out, tall, red-faced. Kid's confused, he said. She's my niece. Just ran off. Rosa backed into Jake. He's lying. Max growled. Jake stepped in front of her. She's not going anywhere with you. The man's eyes narrowed. She's family. Jake's voice dropped. You touch her and I'll have Max finish what he started last year. The man flinched. Max didn't bark. He just stared. Cold, still. The man cursed under his breath, then turned and walked back to his truck. Tires squealed as he sped off. Jake knelt beside Rosa. You're safe now. I promise. Max licked her hand. She whispered, Thank you, Max. Jake looked out at the dark road. Come on, let's get out of here. As the cruiser drove off, lights fading behind them, Max rested his head on Rosa's shoulder. He didn't move, didn't blink, and Rosa, for the first time in weeks, closed her eyes, safe. That night, after Jake filed the report and Rosa was given a blanket and a warm drink at the station, she didn't speak much. Max stayed curled beside her, ears alert, eyes on the door like he was guarding more than just the room. Jake sat across from her. You don't have to talk if you're not ready. But you're safe here. We won't let him hurt you again. Rosa looked up, her voice barely above a whisper. He said no one would come for me. Jake didn't blink. He was wrong. Max let out a soft huff, leaning his head into her leg. Rosa didn't move away. That night, Jake made a call. Got a kid who can't go home, he told the county social worker. She needs somewhere safe. At least for now. We'll try. But space is tight, came the reply. Jake sighed, hanging up. Max came over, nudging his hand. Yeah, I know, Jake muttered. We can't let her go back. Rosa stayed at the station for a few nights. She slept on the old couch in the break room. Max curled protectively beside her. Officers brought her snacks. One gave her a fuzzy blanket with cartoon bears. Another dropped off clean socks. But every time a phone rang, or boots echoed in the hall, Rosa flinched. Jake noticed. So did Max. One night, Jake found her sitting in the hallway, staring at the floor. I keep hearing him in my head, she said quietly. His voice. That smile. Jake knelt beside her. That man doesn't get to own your peace. He always said no one would believe me. I do, Jake said. And Max, he doesn't just protect people. He finds the truth. Max patted over, nuzzling Rosa's arm. See? Jake smiled. He already picked your side. Rosa managed a small nod. He's the first one who ever came for me. The next morning, Jake got the call he'd been waiting for. There's a foster placement in the next town. Might not be permanent, but it's safe, the social worker said. Jake hung up, heart heavy. He looked over at Rosa, still asleep. Max curled beside her, like a silent promise. He didn't want to tell her. Neither did Max. But they had to. Later that day, Jake sat down with her. There's a place for you now. With a nice couple. They've helped kids like you before. Rosa looked at Max. Can he come? Jake hesitated. He's part of the department, but we'll visit. I promise. Rosa looked down. He's the only one I trust. Max leaned in, pressing his head against her. Her arms wrapped around his neck without a word. Jake's throat tightened. It's just for a little while. Until we figure something better out. She didn't cry. She just held on. That night, Jake dropped Rosa off at the foster home. It looked warm, safe. The woman smiled kindly and offered her hot cocoa. But Rosa didn't look back. Not until Max barked softly from the cruiser window. She ran to the door, placing a hand on the glass. Max pressed his nose against it. Don't forget me, she whispered. Jake said gently. He won't. Neither will I. Then he drove away. Max whined once, then went silent. Jake kept his eyes on the road. We'll see her again, partner. I promise. A few nights later, trouble came. It started with a break-in at a store near Rosa's old neighborhood. Then a neighbor reported seeing her uncle circling the foster home. In a truck. Jake's gut twisted. He and Max were out the door before backup even responded. They reached the house just after midnight. The door was open. Jake's voice cracked. Rosa. No answer. Max growled low, nose twitching. He took off toward the backyard. Jake followed. There near the edge of the woods, footprints. A torn piece of Rosa's hoodie on a fence post. Max took one sniff and bolted. Jake shouted into his radio, possible abduction. Following K9 into the woods behind Crestline Drive. Branches whipped past. The wind howled. But Max didn't stop. Then Jake heard it. A scream. Let me go. Rosa. Jake pushed harder, heart pounding. In a clearing he saw it. Her uncle dragging her toward the truck. One hand clamped over her mouth. Max lunged. The man turned too late. Max hit him square in the chest, teeth flashing, fury unleashed. He dropped Rosa and stumbled back. Jake tackled him. Before he could run, Rosa scrambled into Jake's arms, sobbing. He found me again. Jake held her tight. You're safe. He's not going to touch you ever again. Max circled them, growling low, until the man was cuffed and thrown into the cruiser. Rosa looked at Max through tears. You came for me again. Jake smiled. He always will. And that night, Jake made a decision. Rosa wasn't going back into the system. He was going to make sure she had a real home with him and Max. The night had been quiet. Almost too quiet. Jake had just finished his shift and was planning to head home. Max was on leash, but his body was stiff, nose twitching like it had caught something the wind couldn't carry. Come on, buddy, Jake muttered, tugging gently. Let's call it a night. But Max didn't budge. He growled low, a sound Jake hadn't heard in weeks. Not since Rosa's uncle had been arrested. Jake crouched beside him. What is it? Max pulled again, this time harder, toward the alley behind a closed convenience store. Jake followed, his hand instinctively resting on his sidearm. Then he saw her, crouched behind a dumpster, knees to her chest, face buried in her arms. Rosa. Rosa, Jake whispered, stunned. What are you doing here? She looked up, eyes wide and wet. Please, she whispered, don't send me back. Jake's heart sank. Back where? To the new house, she choked out. They seemed nice at first, but it's not safe there. Max stepped forward and nudged her gently. Rosa clung to his neck, sobbing. Jake called it in immediately. This is Officer Jake Morgan. Found minor female Rosa Alvarez near 7th and request child services and backup. He kept his voice steady, but inside he was boiling. Rosa, he said softly, you should have called me. They took my phone, she whispered. Said I couldn't talk to you anymore. Jake's jaw tightened. Max remained alert, his eyes not on Rosa, but on something else. He was staring into the darkness just beyond the dumpster, body tense. Jake followed Max's gaze. A flicker. Movement. Rosa, stay behind me. Max growled again, low and deep. Then shuffling, footsteps. Who's there? Jake called out. No answer. He unholstered his flashlight and swung the beam toward the shadows. A man stepped out slowly, arms raised, greasy jacket, eyes too calm. Jake's voice dropped. Who are you? I was just walking, the man muttered. Didn't know anyone was here. Max barked sharply, jerking toward him. The leash pulled taut in Jake's hand. Rosa flinched. That's one of the men from the house. Jake's eyes locked in. You live with her foster family, the man laughed nervously. Nah, I visit sometimes. Jake didn't wait. Get on the ground, now. The man didn't move fast enough. Max lunged, barking with force. The man dropped instantly, hands over his head. Backup arrived minutes later. The man was cuffed and taken away, but Rosa wouldn't stop shaking. Jake wrapped his jacket around her. Max leaned into her side, quiet now, eyes soft. You were right not to stay, Jake whispered. I'm sorry I ever let you go. Rosa clutched his sleeve. Don't make me go back, please. Jake looked at Max. The dog stared back, like he already knew what Jake was thinking. No more bouncing around, Jake said. You're staying with us now, for good. It took a few days of paperwork, a long sit-down with child services, and more calls than Jake wanted to make, but he meant what he said. Rosa moved into the spare bedroom in Jake's house. Max guarded the hallway like a soldier. At first, Rosa kept her backpack by the door, like she wasn't sure it would last, but Jake didn't push. He let her be. Some nights, he'd find her sleeping on the rug in the living room. Max curled up beside her like a pillow made of safety. Other nights, she sat in silence, stroking Max's ears. He always knows, she said once. Even before I do. Jake nodded. That's his gift. One rainy evening, as thunder rolled across the sky, Rosa sat on the porch steps, Max by her side. Jake stepped out with 2 mugs of cocoa. It's stormy. You all right? Rosa nodded. Storms don't scare me. She looked down at Max. He chased away the real monsters. Jake sat beside her. He saved me too once. She turned. From what? Jake stared into the rain. From feeling useless. From giving up on people. Rosa sipped her cocoa. I didn't think cops felt that way. Jake smiled. Some do, until a dog drags them into a dumpster alley and proves them wrong. She laughed softly. You didn't want to follow him, did you? Jake chuckled. Not even a little. But I've learned, when Max pulls, you follow. Rosa leaned against him, her voice small. Thanks for following. Max rested his head on her lap. Jake looked down at both of them. Where you go, he said gently. We go too. Inside, the phone rang. A new call, another patrol, another night ahead. Jake stood, hand on his belt. Come on, team. Let's roll. Rosa grinned. Can I ride in front? Jake nodded. Only if you help Max with directions. Max barked once like he approved, and with that, the 3 of them stepped into the storm, heading toward whatever came next together. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. Streets were slick. The air smelled like wet asphalt, and something in Jake's gut told him trouble was crawling back in. Rosa was home, curled on the couch with a book. Max was restless, pacing the hallway, sniffing the doorframe, ears twitching at every sound. He wasn't usually like this, Jake noticed. You feel it too, huh? He said softly. Max froze near the window, nose pressed to the glass. That same van, black, windows tinted too dark, just passing again. Jake's phone buzzed. It was the chief. You might want to come down to the station. That van's been spotted circling Rosa's street. It's the third report this week. Jake was already grabbing his badge. I've seen it twice myself. No plates, no ID. And Rosa's uncle, the chief added, he's disappeared from county lockup. Paperwork says transfer. Nobody knows who ordered it. Jake's blood ran cold. We need to pull every camera near that van's. We already did, the chief replied. You'd better take a look yourself. At the station, Jake watched the grainy footage on repeat. The van circled the block, slowly, always around the same time. 7:42 p.m. 3 nights in a row. Each time, it slowed near Jake's house. Jake leaned forward, zoom in on the side window. It was blurry, but clear enough. A silhouette, male, broad shoulders, leaning toward the glass like he was searching for something, or someone. Rosa, Jake clenched his jaw. He's looking for her. Beside him, Max let out a low growl. Jake turned to him. You know that scent, don't you? Max's ears twitched. He stared at the screen like it was personal. Jake whispered, find him. That night, Rosa stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Is something wrong? Jake didn't lie. That van came back. We think it's him. Her eyes widened. He's supposed to be locked up. I know. Max stood between them like a shield. Rosa bent down and placed her forehead against his. You'll keep me safe, won't you? Max didn't move, just held the moment. Jake grabbed his keys. We're not waiting. We're going after him. Rosa looked up. What if he finds us first? Jake's voice was firm. He won't. Max sniffed along the street, where the van had last been spotted. Each step was sure, his nose low, tail stiff. Every nerve locked in. Jake followed, hand on his belt, eyes scanning every passing car. Then Max pulled, hard, toward the alley behind the abandoned mill at the edge of town. Jake's heart picked up. You sure? Max didn't answer, just kept going. They reached the alley, trash cans, empty crates, nothing at first. Then Max barked. A small piece of fabric lay near a drain, black, frayed, the same as the jacket Rosa's uncle wore the night Max tackled him. Jake picked it up carefully. Good boy, he whispered. We've got him. Max circled twice, then sniffed again, this time heading toward the old service road behind the building. Jake stayed close. Lead the way. They tracked the trail deep into the woods behind the mill. Mud sucked at Jake's boots, and branches clawed at his jacket. But Max never stopped. Then, he froze. Jake knelt beside him. What is it? Max growled low, staring at a makeshift shelter. Wooden boards, a tarp, and under it, light. Jake crept forward. Inside, a man sat hunched over a radio static, buzzing. He was muttering, just need one chance, just one. Jake drew his weapon. Hands where I can see them. The man whipped around. Rosa's uncle. He bolted for the back exit, but Max was faster. He tackled him mid-run, knocking him face first into the mud. Jake cuffed him quickly. You're done, Jake snapped. You don't get to haunt her anymore. The man spat mud. She's mine. Jake's voice dropped. She never was. Back at the station, the chief clapped Jake on the back. You and that dog, you just saved that girl's life. Again, Jake looked down at Max, who stood tall, ears alert. He found him. Jake said, I just followed. Back home, Rosa stood on the porch, waiting. When the cruiser pulled in, she ran straight to Max, arms wide. You found him, she whispered, burying her face in Max's fur. Jake nodded. He won't hurt you again. Max licked her cheek, tail wagging slow and steady. Rosa didn't cry this time. She just held on. Inside, Jake sat down with a deep breath. He's not going anywhere for a long, long time, Rosa whispered, because Max never lets go. Jake smiled. No, he doesn't. The three of them sat quietly as the rain faded into silence. But outside, far away, something else was stirring. And Max's ears twitched once more. The morning after Rosa's uncle was taken in, Max wouldn't sit still. His nose was to the ground the moment they stepped outside, pulling Jake toward the tree line beyond the mill. Jake hesitated. What now, Max? Max didn't even look back. He tugged hard, guiding Jake toward a narrow dirt path, barely visible through the underbrush. Jake followed. They pushed through thorns and brush. The deeper they went, the quieter everything became. No traffic, no wind, just birds, distant and nervous. Then Jake saw them, tire tracks, faint but fresh, and beside them, footprints, small, several. Max sniffed the air, ears perked. Then he pawed at something tangled in a bush. Jake knelt and pulled it free. A child's scarf, purple, torn. His stomach turned. This doesn't feel like a smuggler's trail. This feels worse. Max let out a low growl. Jake whispered, "They're taking girls through here, aren't they?" Back at the station, Jake laid the scarf on the table. Rosa stood beside him, silent. She stared at it for a long time before her voice finally cracked. "That's Mia's. She was in the last home with me." Jake's heart sank. "You knew her. She was younger." "Rosa's 10, I think. Real quiet. One day she just didn't come back." Jake gently placed a photo array in front of her. "I need you to look at these, carefully." Rosa nodded, biting her lip. She pointed at the third photo, a man with a crooked smile and two snakes tattooed across his neck. "That one," she whispered. "He came to the house, said I was pretty, said I could make money, be rich." Tears welled in her eyes. "I told him no, but he said he'd find me later." Jake's hands clenched. "We're going to find him first." Jake and Max returned to the trail, this time with backup following quietly behind. They moved faster now, Max staying just ahead. Every few yards, another piece of evidence. A ripped backpack strap, a broken shoe, a candy wrapper with dirt clinging to it. "Looks like they're moving kids at night," Jake muttered, "avoiding roads, using old trails no one monitors." They reached an opening that led to a gravel lot behind an abandoned barn, empty now, but full of tire marks. Jake whispered into his radio, "They're staging here." Then moving fast, maybe across state lines, he turned to Max. "We're close, aren't we?" Max's ears twitched. Then he barked once, sharp and focused. "Let's move." Back at the station, Jake pinned the snake tattoo man's photo to the board. His name was Miguel Torres. History of minor arrests. Always slipped through the cracks. Never enough proof. Until now. Jake grabbed the file and turned to Rosa. "We've got his name, his face. I need everything you remember." She nodded, voice shaking. "He had a van, black, like the other one, but louder, rattled when it moved, and he always smelled like smoke." Jake took notes quickly. "Did he say where he was staying?" Rosa closed her eyes. "Something about the hills. He said, once we hit the hills, no one finds us." Jake paused. "The old cabins." Max barked again, loud this time. Jake turned to him. "Let's go." The hills were rough, steep climbs, broken paths, but Max was relentless, weaving through trees like he'd been there before. Then they heard it, a van, far off, but running. Jake motioned for silence. Max stopped cold, then turned left, bolting through the woods. Jake followed. They came out near a clearing, and there it was, a cabin, run down, door wide open, a black van parked crooked in front. Jake signaled to the others, "Move in on my mark." But before anyone stepped forward, a girl screamed. Jake's blood went ice cold. "Go," he shouted. Officers charged the cabin. Inside, two men scrambled, one with a crowbar, the other reaching for something under a mattress. Max didn't wait. He lunged at the tattooed man, knocking him to the ground before he could grab the weapon. Jake tackled the second. Two girls huddled in the corner, one of them Rosa's friend Mia. She burst into tears the second she saw the badge. Jake called it in. "We've got them." 2 suspects in custody. 2 minors safe. Outside, Max stood watch, ears high, chest heaving. Jake knelt beside him. "You did it again." Max leaned into his shoulder. Back at the station, Rosa saw Mia for the first time in weeks. She ran into her arms. "You're okay," she cried. "I thought you were gone." Mia whispered. "He said no one would find us." Rosa smiled through tears. Max did. Jake stood in the doorway, watching them. The nightmare wasn't over, not yet, but now they had names, faces, a trail, and they had. Jake looked at the map on the wall, then at his partner. There's more out there, isn't there? Max didn't bark. He just stared at the map, and Jake knew they were just getting started. They had the names, the van, the hideout, and now they had a plan. This is our shot, the chief said, laying the map flat. They're circling back tonight. Same route, same method. This time we'll be ready. Jake didn't say much. He just looked at Max, who stood still, tail low, gaze locked on the photo of the last missing girl tacked to the wall. They were running out of time. By nightfall, the sting was in motion. 2 unmarked units parked near the edge of the trail. Officers crouched behind brush, radios low. Jake and Max lay low in the tall grass, hidden by a fallen log. Their car sat nearby, engine off, barely visible in the shadows. And Rosa, she didn't want to stay behind. I know the sound of their voices, she pleaded. If anything goes wrong, I can tell you which one's lying. Jake hesitated, but she was right. He finally nodded. You stay in the back seat. Doors locked. Don't move unless I say. Max licked her hand before she climbed in. I'll be okay, Rosa said quietly. Because he's here. An hour passed. Then headlights appeared, dim, slow, creeping up the trail just like before. Jake pressed his radio. They're here. 3 of them. Everyone hold. The black van rolled into the clearing and stopped. 3 men stepped out. One of them, the one with the snake tattoos, lit a cigarette and looked around. Something's off, he muttered. Jake felt Max stiffen. Then chaos. A twig snapped. A flashlight flicked on too early. Cops, one of the men shouted. Gunfire exploded. Jake ducked as bullets tore through the brush. Officer down. Someone yelled from the radio. Hold your ground, Jake shouted. Do not let them flee. Max barked sharply and bolted toward the left side of the clearing, where one of the men had taken off running. Jake followed, heart pounding, but then he heard her. Rosa's scream. No, let me go. Jake turned back. The man with the snake tattoos had her. He'd pulled her from the back seat during the chaos. Rosa, Jake shouted, sprinting toward the car. The man dragged her toward the van, one arm around her, the other holding a knife. Back off, he snarled. I'll do it, I swear, Rosa cried, kicking and clawing. Jake, help. Jake raised his weapon, but couldn't get a clean shot. Then Max came out of the dark like a missile. He hit the man full force, knocking him off his feet and sending the blade flying. Rosa rolled away, sobbing. Jake tackled the man seconds later, cuffing him hard into the dirt. Officers swarmed the area, chasing down the other suspects. Sirens blared in the distance. But Jake stayed still for a moment, hand on Max's back. You saved her, he whispered. Max didn't move, just breathed hard and watched Rosa as she cried into the grass. Later that night, ambulances came. The downed officer was alive, wounded in the leg but stable. Rosa sat wrapped in a blanket, dirt on her face, but her eyes sharp. I was so scared, she whispered. Jake knelt beside her. I'm sorry. I should have kept you farther back. She shook her head. I'm glad I came. He would have taken someone else. Jake nodded. You were brave. You kept your head. That helped us stop them. Max lay at her feet, tail finally still. They were going to run again, weren't they? Rosa. Jake looked toward the wrecked van. Yeah, but not this time. Back at the station, the mood was tense. Files were opened, evidence logged, photos printed. The chief stood before the team. We got 3 tonight, and we saved 1 girl. But there are more. This ring is bigger than we thought. He looked at Jake. You up for more? Jake glanced at Max, who had already perked up. We're not stopping, Jake said. Not until we shut them all down. Later, Rosa sat on the front steps of the station, wrapped in Max's old blanket. Jake joined her, a warm drink in his hand. I thought it was over, she said. Jake stared out at the street. So did I. But the truth is, this goes deeper. They lied to so many kids, she said. Made them think they were worth nothing. That no one would come. Jake looked at her. But someone did come. You helped make that happen. She reached over and placed a hand on Max's head. I think he always knew, she whispered. Jake smiled. He never forgets a scent or a face. Max leaned into her gently. And tomorrow, Rosa. Jake stood. Tomorrow, we hunt the rest. Rosa stood too, wiping her face. Then I'm helping. Jake raised an eyebrow. You sure? She nodded. I remember everything. Max barked once. Jake gave a quiet smile. All right, partner. Let's finish what we started. Jake's voice ripped through the darkness, but she was already running barefoot, panicked, her sobs lost in the gunfire. The man had dragged her into the woods, disappearing into thick underbrush. Jake shouted into his radio, "Officer needs backup. Suspect fleeing with minor. West tree line." But Max didn't wait. He'd already taken off, muscles coiled like springs, eyes locked onto the movement in the dark. His growl was low, dangerous. Then he vanished into the trees. Jake gave chase, crashing through branches, dodging roots, heart pounding in his ear. He couldn't see Rosa anymore, just flickers, just noise, and Max's snarl, cutting through it all. Then a scream, a snap, and silence. Jake pushed forward, flashlight trembling in his hand. It caught movement up ahead, two bodies on the ground. Max was on top of the man, teeth sunk deep into his arm, growling so hard it rattled the air. "Max, off," Jake shouted. Max hesitated, then obeyed, backing off just enough to let Jake move in. The man rolled over, groaning, blood soaking through his sleeve. Rosa sat just a few feet away, trembling, her knees scraped, her face streaked with dirt and tears. Jake ran to her, dropping to his knees. I got you. I got you." She collapsed into his chest, sobbing. He had a knife. I tried to run. Jake held her tight. "You did everything right. You're safe now." Then he turned. That's when he saw it. Max was limping, favoring his front leg, blood pouring from his shoulder. "No, no, no," Jake crawled to him. "Easy, buddy. Stay with me." Max laid down slowly, eyes never leaving Jake's face. His breathing was shallow, but his tail thumped weakly when Rosa crawled over and placed her hand on his paw. "You saved me again," she whispered. Jake pressed the radio. "K9 officer down. I need medics now. Deep laceration. He's losing blood fast." Another officer's voice crackled back. "ETA 4 minutes. Hold on, Jake." Jake looked into Max's eyes. "You did it, partner. You found her." Max blinked slowly, his breathing uneven. Jake ripped off his own shirt, pressing it against Max's wound. "Stay with me, okay? Just a little longer." Rosa clutched Max's side, tears falling freely. "You can't go. Not after all this. Not now." The ambulance lights broke through the trees, moments later. Medics jumped out, rushing to Max while another team checked Rosa. "He's strong," one medic said, strapping a fluid line to Max's leg. "We've got a chance." Jake didn't leave his side. Not for a second. As they loaded Max into the back, Rosa grabbed Jake's arm. "Can I go with him?" Jake nodded, lifting her gently in. She curled beside Max, hand on his fur. "Don't leave me," she whispered. The medic glanced at Jake. "We'll do everything we can." Jake shut the doors behind them and watched the ambulance speed off, lights flashing. He stood alone in the woods, heart pounding, hands shaking. His partner was hurt, but Rosa was alive. Max had done his job. The vet clinic was ready when they arrived. Lights blazed. Staff moved fast. Max was rushed into surgery. Jake paced the waiting room, Rosa by his side, silent and small. The hours dragged. Then the surgeon came out, blood on her gloves. "He lost a lot of blood," she said. "But the knife missed all major organs. He'll make it, if he rests." Jake exhaled so hard he nearly fell over. Rosa burst into tears. This time, they were relief. "Can we see him?" she asked. The vet nodded. "He's sleeping." But yes, Max lay still on the table, bandaged and hooked to machines. His breathing was slow, steady. Jake sat beside him, hand on his paw. "You scared me, buddy." Rosa climbed into the chair next to Jake. "Thought he was going to die." Jake's voice cracked. "So did I." She looked up at him. "Why does he always do that? Run into danger like that?" Jake smiled softly. "Because that's what heroes do." Rosa gently kissed Max's head. "He's my hero." Jake looked at her. "Mine too." By morning, Max was stable, still tired, still weak, but alive. Jake brought in a soft blanket from home and laid it over him. Rosa curled beside him on the floor. And Jake? He just sat, watching, waiting, thinking. This wasn't over. Not yet. There were more like her, more trails, More monsters in the dark. But they had Max. Wounded or not, Max had made a promise and kept it. Jake leaned in close. You rest now. We'll take the next step when you're ready. Max blinked once, slowly. He had done his job, and soon he'd be ready to do it again. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beeping of machines and the low hum of early morning traffic outside. Rosa hadn't said much since the night they pulled her from the woods. Not when they cleaned the cuts on her knees. Not when the nurses tried to coax her into eating. But Max, still bandaged, still sore, lay curled beside her bed, his head resting against the frame. He hadn't left her side. Jake sat in the corner chair, coffee long gone cold in his hands, waiting. Finally, Rosa broke the silence. They promised to take me to my parents, she whispered, eyes fixed on the ceiling. They said they found them. Jake didn't interrupt. I thought it was real, she continued. That maybe they weren't dead. That maybe it was a mistake. They made it sound so real. Jake leaned forward, his voice low. Who told you that? The man with the tattoos. Miguel. Her voice shook. He showed me a photo, said it was from a shelter where my mom was staying. I didn't want to believe him, but I wanted it to be true. She blinked slowly. So I went with him. Max lifted his head slightly, ears twitching, as if he remembered too. Jake clenched his jaw. They tricked you. Rosa nodded. The van had black curtains. I couldn't see where we were going. And then, when we stopped, there were stairs, hidden under the floor. It wasn't a house. It was like a tunnel. Jake's spine stiffened. What kind of tunnel? Cold, smelled like oil, and something rotten. There were rooms, locked ones. I saw other girls, some younger than me. One tried to talk, but they pulled her away. Her fingers gripped the hospital blanket. They told me I was lucky, she said, that I'd be sold for more because I still had all my teeth. Jake looked away, blinking hard. I screamed the first night, Rosa said quietly, but no one came. Max pushed his nose into her hand. She smiled weakly. Except him. Jake stood in the hallway, fingers tapping against his radio. He'd recorded everything Rosa said, every detail, the tunnels, the rooms, the false promise of her parents. He knew what they were dealing with now, and it was worse than anyone thought. The chief listened in over the phone. We need to find that building, Jake said. Fast. Could be a dozen like it, the chief replied. Old warehouses, farms, abandoned motels. We'll need Rosa's help. She'll do it, Jake said. But she won't do it alone. He glanced back through the window. Rosa had fallen asleep. Max curled around her like a blanket. She's stronger than she looks. Later that day, Rosa sat with a sketch artist. That was the door, she said, pointing. Metal, with bolt. It had numbers, 4 of them, painted in red. Jake jotted down notes. Do you remember the number? 3140, she said. I think. They ran it through the database. Warehouse 3. Edge of county line. Supposedly vacant. Jake's heart pounded. We've got it, he said. We're going in. Jake geared up in silence. Bulletproof vest. Badge clipped tight. He looked over at Max, who was still limping slightly, but standing tall. You sure you're ready? Jake asked. Max didn't blink, just moved beside him. Right. Rosa stepped forward. I want to go, she said. Jake shook his head. Not this time. But you already gave us everything, he said gently. You were brave enough to go through it once. Now let us finish it. Rosa's eyes filled with tears. Jake crouched down. You trust me, right? She nodded. Jake smiled. Then trust that I'll bring them home. Max padded forward, resting his head on her knee. She whispered, be careful. Jake stood, hand on Max's harness. We will. The team moved in just before dark. They found the warehouse. They found the door. Number 3. Just like Rosa said, Jake's team breached from both sides. Inside, the tunnel was real. So were the rooms. 4 girls were found, scared but alive. The traffickers tried to run. They didn't get far. One tried to slip out a back window, but Max was there, waiting. He tackled the man without hesitation, despite the pain in his side. Jake shouted, secure the exit. We've got them. The girls were taken to the hospital. One of them, tiny, shaking, asked for Rosa by name. She helped me, the girl said. She made me feel brave. Jake's throat tightened. He called Rosa from the cruiser. We got them, he said. And there's someone here who wants to meet you. Rosa's voice cracked. Did Max do okay? Jake looked over at his partner, blood-streaked but proud. He did great. That night, Rosa waited on the hospital steps, arms wide as Max climbed out of the car. She hugged him tight, whispering into his fur. "You keep saving me." Jake smiled. "No," he said. "You saved all of us." They'd barely slept. Jake, Max, and the task force were running on coffee and adrenaline now. Each rescue led to more names, more clues, more horrors. And one address kept popping up. An old house on the edge of town, near the river, with a red door and no windows in the back. Jake and Max were the first to respond. As they turned onto the gravel path, Max began to growl, low, steady, like he didn't need to see it to know. Jake parked a block away and crouched behind a tree, binoculars in hand. The house looked abandoned, overgrown lawn, peeling paint, but it wasn't empty. A faint shadow moved past the curtain. Jake whispered into his radio, eyes on the house, one occupant, waiting on backup. Max's growl deepened. Jake looked down at him. "You feel it too, huh?" Max didn't blink. Jake's hand tightened on his weapon. "Let's move." They approached quietly, weaving through trees until they reached the back. No windows, just a single locked door, steel bolts, reinforced. Jake signaled, breaching on 3. 1, 2, Max lunged before 3. The door cracked open as Jake kicked it in. What hit them wasn't sound, but smell, rot, sweat, chemicals, and silence. Inside, the floor creaked with every step. The walls were lined with thin mattresses, dirty, torn, stained, chains bolted to the floor. Jake's stomach turned. "Clear the room," he called out, even though he knew no one was here. Max sniffed the corners, moving slowly, tail low. Jake spotted a small table near the fireplace. On it, passports, dozens, all fake. He flipped through them, names that didn't match faces. Kid, girls barely older than Rosa. A picture fell from one. Jake picked it up. A girl, smiling, missing tooth, handwritten on the back. Her name's Elena. He closed his eyes for a moment, swallowing hard. "We were too late for some," he whispered. Max let out a soft whine. Jake nodded. "I know, boy. I know." They called in evidence teams, forensics, photographers. Rosa was back at the station when Jake returned. She looked up as soon as he walked in. "You found the house?" Jake nodded slowly. "Yeah." She hesitated. "Anyone there?" Jake shook his head. "No people. Just signs they were there." Rosa looked down. "Like the rooms?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. She wrapped her arms around herself. That was their last stop before they vanished them, wasn't it? Jake sat beside her. "We don't know." "Yes, you do," she said softly. "So do I." Max walked over and laid his head on her knee. She stroked his ears slowly. "They kept saying we were just numbers, that nobody would care if we disappeared." Jake's voice cracked. "They were wrong," Rosa whispered. "I think some of the girls still believe it." That night, Jake sat alone in the squad room, flipping through the confiscated passports. Each name burned into his mind. Max lay under the desk, eyes open, watching him. Jake sighed. "We were too late for some, but not for all." He looked at a map pinned to the wall. Markers dotted it. Red for found, blue for missing. Too many blues. A knock came at the door. It was Rosa, holding a drawing in her hand. "I couldn't sleep," she said. Jake stood. "You okay?" She nodded, then held out the paper. It was a sketch, childlike but clear. The red-doored house, the chains, the table. Jake stared. "You remember it?" he asked. "I was there," Rosa said. "Not for long, but I was." She pointed to a corner. There was a trapdoor. "I heard someone say it leads to the water." Jake's pulse quickened. "We didn't find a trapdoor." "You didn't look under the fireplace," Rosa said. "They used to slide it open when new girls came in." Jake grabbed his keys. "You just gave us our next move." Rosa reached for Max's paw. "Take him. He knows." By the time they got back to the house, most of the team had cleared out. Jake and Max moved toward the fireplace, Rosa's drawing in hand. Jake knelt and pressed his palm to the edge. She said, "It slides." He pushed. Nothing. Then Max pawed at the stone. A click echoed through the room. The hearth groaned and shifted, revealing a metal handle. Jake looked at Max. "Good boy." They pulled the hatch open. A narrow stairway stretched into darkness. Jake switched on his flashlight and descended slowly. Max close behind. At the bottom, storage crates, ropes, bottles, and clothing, tiny shoes. Jake's hands shook. But something else caught his eye. A journal. He opened it. Dates. Locations, sales, names. Jake backed up. We found their ledger. Max barked once, loud and sharp. Jake whispered, now we bring them all down. The journal they found under the fireplace cracked the whole thing wide open. Names, schedules, drop-off points, and at the top of every page, one signature. Miguel Alvarez, the real ringleader, not just Rosa's kidnapper. The man running the entire operation, a ghost in every case file, always one step ahead. Until now. He's running, the chief said, slamming the folder down on Jake's desk. Crossing state lines, headed for Mexico. Jake didn't hesitate. We'll stop him. Max stood by the door, tense, ears forward, as if he'd heard it all. Jake grabbed his vest. You ready for one last run, partner? Max barked once. The desert road stretched out like a ribbon, dust kicking behind Jake's cruiser as they flew past cactus and sage. Last camera hit him 15 minutes ago. Dispatch, crackled. Black van, no plates. Southbound, fat. Jake pushed the pedal harder. Beside him, Max stood with his head near the open window, nose twitching. He knows, Jake muttered. He always knows. They crested a hill. There, half a mile ahead, a black van sped through the sand-blasted road, weaving in and out of the yellow lines. Jake hit the siren. The van didn't stop. Pull over now, Jake yelled into the loudspeaker. You're surrounded. But the van only sped up. Jake gripped the wheel. All right then, Max growled deep in his throat. The chase was on. Dust clouded the air as the van fishtailed around a bend. Jake stayed close, tires skidding, dirt flying. He's going to crash, dispatch warned. Terrain gets rough past mile marker 6. Jake didn't care. He's not getting away. Max paced in the back seat, muscles tight. Jake rolled the back window down. Get ready, he told him. This is your shot. They gained ground, closer, closer. Then the van door flew open. Miguel leaned out, a pistol in hand, firing wildly behind him. Gun, Jake shouted, ducking. Bullets ripped through the cruiser's windshield. Jake swerved, but never backed off. Then Max moved. Before Jake could say another word, Max launched from the open window, sailing through the air like a rocket, straight into the van. A scream tore from the vehicle. The van wobbled. Jake slammed on the brakes, dust exploding around him. The van spun out, tires screeching, back end lifting, then slammed sideways into a ditch. Jake jumped from the cruiser, weapon drawn. Show me your hand. The driver's door opened slowly. Miguel stumbled out, blood on his arm, face pale. Max followed right behind him, growling, jaws clenched around a torn piece of Miguel's sleeve. Miguel collapsed to the ground, gasping, call him off. He's crazy. Jake pressed his boot to Miguel's back and cuffed him. That's not crazy. That's justice. Backup arrived within minutes. Miguel was loaded into the back of a squad car, screaming all the way. You don't know who you're messing with. This doesn't end here. Jake just watched, arms crossed. Oh, it ends, he said. Right now. Max stood at his side, panting, tired but alert. A medic checked him over. No deep wounds, she said. Just scrapes. He's tough. Jake smiled. You have no idea. Back at the station, the mood was electric. Officers cheered when they saw Miguel escorted through the doors in cuffs. Survivors cried, parents called, and Rosa, she waited outside, bouncing on the tips of her toes when she saw Max walk in beside Jake. He did it, she asked. Jake nodded. He stopped the last one. Rosa dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around Max. I knew you would. I knew you'd find him. Jake crouched beside her. It's over now. Rosa looked up. All of it. Jake looked through the station doors where the photos of the missing still hung. Not all, he admitted. But the worst part, the heart of it, that's over. That night, Jake stood on the rooftop staring out at the stars. Max sat beside him, finally rested. You know, Jake said softly, we weren't supposed to get this far. You were the dog nobody wanted, the one they called broken. Max tilted his head. Jake smiled. But you never gave up. Not on Rosa. Not on me. He looked down at the badge pinned to his. They'll probably give us medals or something. Max blinked slowly. Jake chuckled. You don't care, do you? A breeze rolled over them. And that's what makes you different, Jake whispered. You did it for her, for them. You just knew. Max let out a quiet huff and laid his head on Jake's boot. I couldn't have done it without you, partner. The stars above shimmered, and somewhere in town, a little girl slept peacefully, for the first time in months, because a dog no one believed in chased a monster no one else could catch, and ended it. The crowd outside City Hall stretched across the entire block. Police cars lined the street, their lights silent but flashing like stars. Reporters jostled for space, microphones out. Children clutched signs with Max's name written in shaky handwriting. Jake stood in the back, hands in his pockets, watching quietly. This wasn't about him, it was about Max and Rosa. Up on the steps, Rosa stood tall, clean clothes, braided hair, a small smile on her face, but her grip on Max's leash never loosened. The mayor adjusted the microphone, his voice booming across the plaza. Today, we honor a hero, one with 4 legs and a heart braver than most people I've ever met. Max, the canine no one believed in, saved lives. He exposed a trafficking ring. He protected one of our own when danger was at her door. Applause broke out. Max stood still beside Rosa, wearing a fresh red collar and a gold medal that gleamed against his dark fur. But his eyes weren't on the mayor or the cameras. He was scanning the crowd, ears twitching, nose sniffing the air. Rosa leaned down and whispered, "He's looking for you." Jake had stayed behind the barricades, blending into the crowd, but when he saw Max fidget, pulling gently at the leash, he stepped forward. Rosa spotted him first, and waved. Jake raised a hand, awkward but smiling. The mayor noticed the shift in the crowd and turned to Rosa. "Would you like to say something?" he asked. Rosa hesitated, then nodded. She stepped to the mic, voice soft but clear. "He saved me," she said, when no one else could. Silence. Even the cameras paused. "I didn't believe anyone would come. I thought I was invisible, but he saw me." She looked down at Max, tears in her eyes. "He chased them, fought for me, and when I couldn't run anymore, he did it for me." More applause. Cameras clicked. Jake's eyes welled as Rosa whispered into the mic, "He's not just a dog, he's my family." After the ceremony, reporters tried to get close, wanted interviews, posed photos, but Max wasn't interested. He tugged at the leash, eyes still searching. Rosa laughed. "He's not going to sit until he finds him." Jake stepped through the crowd, finally coming close enough for Max to see him. The moment their eyes met, Max's tail thumped hard against the concrete. Jake dropped to one knee, and Max broke from Rosa's grasp and barreled forward. They collided like old friends, Jake's arms wrapping around Max's neck, Max pressing into his chest. "You really went and became a star, huh?" Jake murmured, scratching behind his ears. Max licked his face once, then rested his head on Jake's shoulder. The crowd watched, quiet, and moved. One reporter whispered, "That's the moment." And it was. Later, inside the hall, Jake and Rosa sat at a small table while Max napped at their feet, his head resting on Jake's boot. Like always, Rosa picked at a cookie, then looked up. "Is he going back to the kennel?" Jake shook his head slowly. "No, he's not going anywhere." Her face lit up. "He gets to stay with you." Jake smiled. "He always did. We're partners. Always will be." She reached down and stroked Max's head. "I think he knows." Jake nodded. "He's known since day one, even when nobody else saw it." As the sun began to set, Jake stood outside with Max, looking out at the town they'd fought so hard to protect. The medals, the speeches, they didn't matter much. What mattered was this moment. Max beside him, Rosa safe, the girls returning home, the case closed, and tomorrow, they'd wake up and do it all again. The mayor came up behind them quietly. "You've got something special there," he said. Jake nodded. "I know. We'd like to feature Max on the department's new outreach poster. The kids, they see him as a symbol of hope." Jake looked down at his partner. "That's exactly what he is." That night, back at Jake's small house on the edge of town, Max curled up on the porch beside Jake's chair. The desert wind was soft. The stars shimmered. Rosa's drawing hung on the fridge. Her voice from earlier echoed in Jake's mind. "He's my family." Jake sipped his coffee and reached down to scratch Max behind the ear. "You were the dog nobody wanted. They said you were broken." Max let out a quiet, content sigh. Jake smiled. "Funny thing is, I think you fixed all of us." Max closed his eyes. His job was done. But his story was far from over. They told her it was just procedure, protective custody, temporary housing, new ID, new location, just until things settled. But Rosa didn't want new. She wanted safe. And safe didn't mean another cold room, another strange bed, another lock on the door that wasn't hers. "I don't want to go," she whispered, hugging Max tightly. Jake stood in the hallway outside the child services office, fingers clenched around his phone. He had never felt this kind of weight before. She wasn't just a witness, not just part of the case. She was his responsibility now. He took a deep breath and dialed. "Chief, it's Jake. Look, I know what the system says. I know the rules. But," he paused, eyes flicking toward Rosa through the glass. "She's been through enough. She doesn't need protection. She needs a family." Silence on the other end. Then, "You sure about this?" Jake didn't hesitate. "I'm sure." Another long pause. Then the chief sighed. "All right, she can stay with you. Paperwork will follow." Jake's shoulders dropped with relief. When he walked back in, Rosa looked up with puffy eyes. "Did they say I have to go?" Jake knelt down in front of her. "No. They said, you're coming home." Her mouth opened slightly. "With you?" He nodded. "If you'll have a—" Max wagged his tail hard, then bumped his nose into her chest. Rosa started crying again, but this time they were soft, trembling tears of joy. She threw her arms around Jake's neck. "Thank you, thank you." Jake hugged her back gently. "You're not alone anymore." Later that evening, Jake unlocked the door to his house. It wasn't big, 2 bedrooms, creaky floorboards, and the faint smell of old coffee. But it was warm, safe. Rosa stepped inside slowly, clutching a small paper bag with her only belongings. She looked around like she was afraid it would disappear. Max trotted in ahead, circling the living room before hopping up on the old couch and flopping down with a huff. Jake pointed down the hallway. "That one's your room. It's not much yet, but we'll fix it up." Rosa peeked in. The walls were bare, the bed small, but it had blankets, a nightlight, a little window that caught the sunset just right. She smiled. "Can Max sleep in there too?" she asked. Jake nodded. "If you can convince him to share the bed." Rosa giggled for the first time in days. "I think he already picked his side." They ordered pizza and sat on the floor with paper plates. Rosa fed Max crusts under the table while Jake told stories of Max's first days at the station. "He once ate an entire ham sandwich out of the chief's drawer," Jake said. "He did not." Rosa gasped. "He did, wrapper and all." Max wagged his tail proudly, as if he remembered every bite. That night, Jake stood at Rosa's door. She was already in bed. Max curled at her feet. "Night, kiddo," he said quietly. Rosa looked up. "Jake?" "Yeah." "Do I call you? What do I call you now?" Jake blinked, caught off guard. "You can call me whatever you want." She hesitated. "Okay. Good night, Jake." He smiled. "Good night, Rosa." Jake's voice caught in his throat. "Always." He shut the door softly. In the living room, Jake sat on the couch, staring at the metal on the mantel. Max's name etched in gold. It sparkled in the lamplight. He shook his head. They all said Max was too wild, too stubborn, too broken. And yet here they were. Max lay at Rosa's feet now, protecting her in sleep the same way he did in danger. Jake leaned back and closed his eyes. This wasn't just a rescue story. This was the beginning of something real. A team. A family. In her room, Rosa rolled over and whispered, "You stayed." Max shifted closer, tail brushing her ankle. She buried her face in his fur. For the first time, "I'm home." And Max? He didn't move. Because his job wasn't just protecting anymore. It was loving. Nights were quiet now, but not always peaceful. Rosa still woke up crying sometimes. Breath caught in her throat, hands trembling, heart pounding from dreams that weren't really dreams. Memories had a way of sneaking in when the world went quiet. But Max always knew. Before she could even sit up, he was there, leaping from his spot near the door, landing gently on the bed, placing his paw on her chest like a steady heartbeat. "I'm here," his eyes seemed to say. "You're safe." And somehow, every time, it worked. Rosa would lie back down, fingers tangled in his fur, tears soaking into his neck. Her breathing would slow, her heart would settle. She didn't say much afterward. She didn't have to. Because Max understood without words. He always had. Jake had seen it all from his doorway. He never said anything when the cries came in the middle of the night. He didn't rush in, because Max always got there first. One night, Rosa sat on the porch, legs curled under her, eyes fixed on the stars. Jake joined her, handing her a blanket. She took it without a word. Max laid between them, eyes half closed but alert. Do the nightmares ever go away? She asked softly. Jake exhaled. Not completely, but they get quieter. She nodded slowly. I don't like sleeping. Feels like falling back into it. Jake looked over. But Max is there every time, right? She smiled faintly. Yeah. He always knows, even before I do. They sat in silence for a while. Then Rosa whispered, he's not just a dog. Jake nodded. No, he's something more. At school, Rosa kept to herself, still adjusting, still unsure. But one day, during show and tell, her teacher asked her to share something special. Rosa stood up, nervous, and held up a drawing. It was Max, big and strong, standing in front of her like a shield, teeth bared toward a shadowy figure. He's my dog, she said. His name is Max. The class watched silently. He's a K9. But not just for the police. He saved me from bad people. He found me when I was lost. And he never lets me feel scared anymore. A boy in the back raised his hand. Is he like your superhero? Rosa thought for a second, then shook her head. No, he's my angel. Her teacher had to wipe her eyes before moving on to the next kid. Jake had to sign permission forms to let Max visit school. He didn't mind. Max loved the attention, especially from the quiet one. He always found them, like he could tell who needed him most. And Rosa, she finally started smiling more. At recess she laughed. At home, she danced in the kitchen again. She still had scars, inside and out, but she was healing. Because every day, Max reminded her she wasn't broken. One afternoon, Jake pulled into the driveway after work. Rosa was outside, tossing a ball for Max. She waved. He caught 3 in a row. Jake stepped out of the car, grinning. You trying to train him for baseball now? She giggled. He'd be the best pitcher. Max dropped the ball at her feet, tail wagging. Jake walked over, ruffling Max's ears. You've got a new job, huh? He said. Therapy dog by day, pitcher by evening. Max barked once, proud and happy. Rosa reached down and kissed the top of his head. I don't think he ever stops working, she said. Jake looked at Max. That's what makes him special. Later that night, Rosa sat at the table doing homework while Max dozed beside her. She looked up suddenly. Jake. Yeah. When I grow up, can I be like you? Jake smiled. You want to be a cop? No, she said. I want to help people the way you helped me, and the way Max does. Jake leaned back. Then you already are. She blinked. Really? You survived, Jake said. You tell the truth. You're brave. That's helping more than you know. She looked at Max. I think he's the bravest. Jake nodded. Me too. That night, the nightmare came again. Rosa shot up, breath sharp, eyes wide. But Max was already there. Paw on her chest, head tucked close. She didn't cry this time. She just reached for him and whispered, I'm okay. You're here. And he stayed until the morning light crept through the curtains. Until her breathing slowed. Until she was steady again. Some scars fade, others don't. But with Max beside her, Rosa didn't feel like a victim anymore. She felt strong, whole, alive, because Max had been more than just a K9. He had been the one soul who refused to let the world take her. He had stood between her and darkness when she couldn't stand for herself. He was the reason she still believed in good. And when people asked her what made her different, what saved her, she'd smile and say, I had an angel. And maybe somewhere out there, another child is still waiting to be found. Another Max is ready to rise. If this story touched your heart, share, like, comment, and subscribe, because stories like this deserve to be heard, and heroes like Max, they deserve to be remembered.